Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative take about the world around me. So, on Speaker, there's a new thing that I enacted for listener support. And you enjoy my content, it would be greatly appreciated. I will include that link in this episode. So, I'm in a transition here. So, as far as excuse me about that. As far as cleaning the house and getting everything situated as far as the different platforms that I'm on, so I'm in transition. And currently, into everything, I update everything as far as the available links. And currently on Speaker, you can see all of my current content. And then as far as Pandora and all of that, I'm working on the process of updating that too, and figuring all that out to get that out there. But come on along and hear me on Speaker, on Spotify, and in everything else that I'm working to grow to continue to grow out and branch out on. And also on YouTube. And I will provide all of that content for you, the YouTube link for you in this episode. So this episode is the last installment for me talking about urban legends to end the month of July. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a two-pronged process about talking about urban legends that center around in the U.S., which is the origin in the U.S., and how that links out to the different urban legends in the states, urban legends, and that how that lore changes the aspect and the culture of the particular states that is coming from, as far as the interpretation about the different urban legends. And then I'm going to move globally and to the aspects of urban legends from an international perspective and how urban legends are seen from those point of views. All right, so let's dive in. Okay, so from my point of view, as far as urban legends, particularly my first introduction to the aspect of that, understanding it more and more, getting older, was through a book. Growing up, that you're a kid of a certain growing up as a child of a certain era of a certain age, from the 90s on to when I was introduced to this in the early 2000s, particularly in 2000, the book of scary stories. So, seeing the illustrations and then reading the stories, the illustrations really do that extra layer of edge into the depths of creepiness and to those elements of really impacting, let me say that again, impacting the power of these stories. And you get the fear and the call to action where the written part cannot. And then, my curiosity as I got older is quite interesting to find that out of that center around the aspect of urban legends and how that is interesting when it takes a center around the aspect of introducing these elements to children. And I just think it's really fascinating when you break down all of these things and it comes out into the surface level of what culture is, what kind of culture is centered around the aspect of urban legends. And then how urban legends shape and define a particular part of the world, and more in this part of the section of my podcast, focusing in on this episode of the U.S. and particularly the states. And it's quite interesting to me where, with each state in the U.S. has their own particular symbol of what is recognizable to everyone, universally. And then, whether that be clothing, literature, food, things of that nature. These are things that are seen as a means of things that are easy to relate to for the most part. But when you get into the aspects of talking about the urban legend part of where that comes from, of what a state is recognizable with in the urban legend, that's a particularly unique thing because it taps on, to me, the aspect of fear, and out of those fears, what are they particularly saying around what is the mass center around these particular fears? Where do they come from? Do they come from a aspect of expectation, an aspect of status? What is that actually about? And so in this particular episode, I want to dive in and talk about these urban legends and give my thoughts on it, and break that down about that connection of what is it really actually saying out of the supernatural elements, and linking it to the within the supernatural elements. A lot of times it centers around particular fears and what do those fears mean, and then so forth, and to the international perspective about urban legends. All right, so here we go. Let me start out with Alabama and the Hell's Gate Bridge. The generally accepted story of Hell's Gate Bridge starts in the 1950s, according to the Oxford Paranormal Society. A young couple driving over the bridge somehow drove their car off of the bridge one night, and they both drowned. There are two legends associated with Hell's Gate Bridge. One, if you drive your car out of the middle of the bridge and turn off the lights, the couple will magically appear in your car and leave a wet spot on the seat. The other, which is how the bridge got its name, is the belief that if you drive over the bridge and look over your shoulder halfway through, the scenery behind you turns into a portal to hell, which engulfs in flames, potentially to curb ghost hunters and bored teenagers. Hellgate's Bridge is closed to cars, according to the Anston Star, and is in such despair that walking across it is strongly discouraged. So it's really interesting with this saying. This particularly reminds me of that aspect of the scene that, you see with Beetlejuice. So this young couple, they're going through a bridge, and you never know, that could be the link of that. It could be an urban legend linking into that particular scene where they're going over a bridge, and then the dog is on the ledge of a wooden plank, and then they're begging the dog to stop, to not get on the get off, to not, not tip over the wooden plank, and he does, and then they fall to their demise. So in that aspect, to me, it interprets the elements of youth, and mixing that into the aspects of immortality, and the aspects of, in that immortality, where does death, as far as the concept of your purpose in life, where does that fall in? And so it's one of those, things that goes deep within the elements of questioning our aspect of that, not to take things particularly of interest of for granted, in the elements of the grandeur of youth, and then breaking that down with the grandeur of youth, of that ever presence of that ironical fate of everything is promised, and your youth, you have your whole life ahead of you, and then without warning, it's all taken away. And then the aspect of the undertones of that with the supernatural layer of Hell's Gate, and what is that actually saying, in the aspect of that, an element of how, particularly in the masses, of how everything is represented, as far as from a point of view with Satan, with witches, with witchcraft and stuff like that. Youth, particularly taking the souls of youth, is in the best interest of their own needs of, deceiving their own appearances so they can look young, and so they can keep alluring people to the aspects of the power of sin, and then the aspects and the elements of the nature of that, of allure, into the depths of deceptions of what hell actually means. No, it's not what you're saying. It's if you get into the element of, it's all about the presentation of looks of youth. It's not bad particularly. It's from the point of view of temptation, of that, of what I'm getting into, of from this point of view of how it's presented with people who portray people as, a Satan, or who witchcraft with that within, the minions of that it's all about what you can get and how your youth is worth your soul, so to speak. And that's a particular element that I get for that. So I'm quite interested to know what you all think about this, because I think it's this, these elements are really, really fascinating. So it's always interesting to me whenever I see these particular aspects of there's a portal to the how the linking of the portal to hell, or these sort of things, that these vortex of this whole aspect of this, from my point of view, of constant struggle of fighting good versus evil, and how these elements surface itself into different aspects of culture. And so I would like to know what you all think. Leave comments or email me. It'd be greatly appreciated. And it is also very interesting too about the literature aspect of it, of Paradise Lost, of how being so captured with your own personal gain, it changes your appearance. So in the book, Satan, he's unrecognizable to everyone else because of he doesn't see the destruction that he has caused into the divine order and the natural order, and he doesn't even doesn't even know of what the toll has taken onto his appearance. It's quite interesting. And I just think, all of these things kind of link in to me from my point of view when I see things like that. And it's just quite interesting to how that changes the element of the notion that there could possibly be a portal to hell, and how that gives also the element of the aspect of the the southern notion of the leaning toward the stereotype of the Bible thumping sort of mentality of the aspect of the religion point of view about this too. And that's something to think about, I think. Sorry about the dog. So here we go with Alaska, the Alaskan Triangle. So everyone knows the story of the Bermuda Triangle, but you might not know about the Alaskan Triangle. On average, 5 out of every 1,000 people go missing in Alaska. The Los Angeles Times reported in 2005. So even if there's nothing supernatural going on, it's easy to get lost in the Alaskan wilderness. The Thailand, I'm sorry for the pronunciation of that tribe, who lived in the Juneau I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to cut this out. All right, here we start over again. So, the Los Angeles Times reported in 2005, so even if there's nothing supernatural going on, it's easy to get lost in the Alaskan wilderness. So, there have been their own an explanation about this. The high number of missing people is called the evil spirits, or the Kushnaka. I believe the pronunciation of that. So according to books such as In Search of the Kushnaka, Alaska, or other Bigfoot, there are shapeshifters, half man, half otter, who lure women and children to the water with fake cries in order to steal their human spirits and drown them. So this is a lot like the aspects of the Iliad, particularly with the siren aspect, how they, beckon the sailors into the shores, and how it's their ultimate demise because they're demonic spirits, really, with the intentions of death. And that, I think that's, quite interesting how that overlays with these tones, particularly of that ethos and the pathos, with the impact that you feel, that is drawn within the elements that captures those emotions of that aspect of using literary prose using the literary prose, but also within the literary prose, using that element of imagery to depict the nature of elements, supernatural elements, doing demonic things to send people to their ultimate death. And it's also interesting how it's unfortunate the way Stephen King, went about with the demands of the woke culture, so to speak. But these elements, he in his heyday, with writing it, how he really viscerally wrote and got that element of shape shifting into a masterful way of the elements of how horrific it is. And the Pennywise character, is a shapeshifter, and how the lure of shifting into people's fears and tapping that in, and to using it as a tool to massively kill all of these children, and then massively kill people, particularly, I don't want to go into the depth of that, but these elements are seen present in different aspect. My point is in different aspect of culture, and that's quite interesting when you get into that. And then in the allure of the Alaskan aspect of bringing on, particularly from my point of view, the other element of, living in Alaska is an isolated state. And that sense of isolation, of what that can do mentally to you as far as and from a psychological perspective too of adding on that add the intrigue of that too with the aspect of this Bermuda or Alaskan Triangle point of view about this urban legend. So Arizona, the ghost of the Slaughterhouse Canyon. The story of the Slaughterhouse Canyon, also called the less frightening Luna's Canyon, takes place during the gold rush, according to the miner. During the 1800s, was a family who lived in the canyon. They were very poor, so the father would venture out for food for his family. As you might have guessed, one day the father did not return, so his family slowly starved and descended into madness. The mother, unable to bear listening to her children's cries anymore, put on her wedding dress, murdered her children, and then threw them into a nearby river. The next day, she succumbed to starvation herself. The legend states that if you go down to Slaughterhouse Canyon at night, even now you will hear the loud, anguished cries of the mother who lost her mind. And wow, this is, it again, this element of the intrigue of the aspect of what morally happens. What would you do in a situation like this? And it seems to be an overall undertone question that comes about a lot in urban legends. Put in very extreme conditions, what will the length of the person take or go to solve the solution or to detour the solution? So, all right, so here we go. The Boogie Creek Monster. According to Atlas Obscura, the Boogie Creek Monster is the folk of Arkansas's version of Sasquatch. They're commonly accepted to be around 6 or 8 feet tall and covered in hair. Legend says that it roams the creeks of rural Arkansas. He was first spotted in 1834 when people reported seeing a wild man. These days, after people claim to spot the Boogie Creek Monster, the sightings are documented on the official Boogie Creek Monster website. So, California, the Charman. The Charman's origin story is told in the journal Western Folklore. So, a father and son were both caught in a house fire and horribly burned in 1948. After the fire, the son became so mentally unstable that he killed his father. When the police found the son, he was so unrecognizably burnt they didn't realize he was alive. So he ran away before they were able to arrest him for the murder of his father. The story goes that ever since then, the Charman can be spotted wandering the woods, and occasionally approaching tents of innocent campers or pretending to be a hitchhiker and then attempting to attack them. So, Colorado, the many legends of Riverdale Road. Riverdale Road is the site of not one, but 8 creepy stories, ranging from the Hell Gate to ghosts of slaves hanging from the trees. The stretch of road is decidedly spooky as reported by local affiliate Fox 31. The creepiest story, though, is that of the Phantom Jogger. One day, there was a driver who hit a jogger and left him for dead. Now, it's said that if you park at the site of the crash, you'll hear this disembodied of the footsteps and getting closer and closer to your car. People have reported handprints on their windows and banging noises as someone was kicking the outside. And it is quite interesting how this links to the aspect of the man with the hook and the a hitchhiker, how these things are linked together as far as talking about this aspect of the Riverdale Road. So, Connecticut, known as the Wicked Witch of Monroe, according to CT Insider, Hannah Crenna gained a reputation as a witch in the 19th century when her husband died by mysteriously falling off of a cliff, and locals reportedly believed that she had been bewitched. Believed that she had bewitched him. People also believed that she would cast spells on people that she did not like. Hannah lived to the age of 77, but right before she died, she asked to be carried down to the cemetery in her coffin by foot, not wagon. After her death, the people of Monroe tried to wheel her coffin down the hill, but were unable. The coffin kept falling off, so they were forced to carry it. When the townspeople returned to her home, it was found to be engulfed in flames, sealing Hannah's reputation of witchcraft. All right, Hawaii, the night marchers. So night marchers, according to Honolulu magazine, there are not evil spirits, but they do demand respect. They are spirits of ancient Hawaiian warriors who march around the islands to protect sacred areas. So legend says that if you look directly at a night marcher, you will be marked for death. And if by some chance you find yourself in the middle of this, you are supposed to lie down in the middle of the road. So Idaho, the water babies of Massacre Rocks. Water babies are Native American legends that are found in a couple of different places in America. But most famously, they're found at the Massacre Rocks State Park. The Shoshone tribe was first recorded in 1805, according to the Encyclopedia of the Great Plains, and were roaming the Great Plains as early as the 1500s. So it's not clear when exactly the legend originated. So, as it goes on, the story says that the Shoshone experienced extreme famine and mothers were forced to drown their babies in rivers rather than watch their children starve, as told by Weird US. Okay, so here we go with Homie the Clown. And it's quite interesting how this is actually based on the In Living Color show, and how, how that takes on a different toll when something that you see in pop culture, particularly in a certain area of time, and the elements in the arena of culture, particularly in the early 90s, and how this is linked back into a urban legend of culture with a state. And then, that whole element of clowns being creepy and how that element is linked to children and to take away their innocence and tap into fear. And it's very, I don't know what that is. Why is that a thing? It's something to really, pay attention to. Like, why is that a lot of times where it digs into the elements of child child losing their innocence, and what is that aspect of that too. And then I like to know what you all think about this too. It'd be, leave comments too, as far as if you're intrigued too, as far as my email, and I'll provide all the other links too where you can reach me. All right, so throughout the suburbs of Chicago in the 1990s, there was a rumor going around the elementary schools. There was a creepy man dressed as Homie the Clown, driving around in a white van trying to lure kids into it with candy and money, according to the Chicago Reader and the Chicago Tribune. In some variations, he was a kidnapper. In others, he was a rapist. But in all variations, Homie left a mark on young Chicago kids in the 1990s. So, the 100-Step Cemetery in Indiana. The 100-Step Cemetery is located in the town of Brazil, according to the Brazilian Times. While it's not clear when the stories about the cemetery began, there are gravestones that date back to the 1860s. So the legend states that if someone finds themselves in the cemetery at midnight, they must climb the steps and count to 100. At this point, a ghost of an undertaker will appear and show the person a vision of their death. All right, so linking this to Iowa, the Black Angel. The Black Angel stands over 8 feet tall in Oakland Cemetery in Iowa City, and she is black due to oxidation, most likely because of the dark appearance. Multiple legends have cropped up around her. One legend says that a pregnant woman should never walk under her, or she'll lose the child. Others say that if you touch or kiss the statue, you'll be dead within 6 months. And on to Kentucky, the goat man of the Pope Lick. There's no clear conscience on how the goat man came to be. Some say he was a circus performer, others say he was a farmer who tortured his goats for Satan, and in return was transferred into a hideous ghost monster. However, everyone does agree on his appearance: dark fur, pale skin, goat legs, and horns. Is according to a Wave 3, which is a local news outlet. So the monster is said to hide under the bridge at Public Creek in Louisville to lure people onto the train tracks, only to see them be hit by oncoming trains. And then this reminds me too of the elements of troll and the lore and the folklore about that too. Okay. All right, so New Jersey, the Jersey Devil. The story of the Jersey Devil has been around since 1700s. So the legend states that a woman named Mother Leeds became pregnant with the 13th child and said, "Let this one be the devil." When the child was born, and it grows hooves, wings, horns, and tails. The monster has been spotted periodically through history in the Pine Barrens regions of New Jersey. The state has embraced the legend so much that they named their hockey team after it. So New Mexico, La Mala Hora. La Mala Hora, which translates to the evil hour. La Mal Hora. So is it an entity that you don't want to run into a dark road? Legend says that at first it appears as a ball of black energy, constantly moving and changing its size and shape. If you look at it, it will drive you insane and will slowly kill you. Other times, it appears as scary looking. It's a scary looking woman. It's said that if you see her at a crossroads, you or someone in your family will die. So, New York. The story of Corsby has many iterations. The lineup reported, but it generally tells the story of a man who stalked a sleepaway camp, psychiatric facility, children's hospital, and a hook for a hand, and killed children who were wandering along at night. Every single person who went to camp in upstate New York has heard about this. So, and then again, like I was saying about the element of children, is I don't know. That's really strange and it's really something. All right, so I'm going to end on this one. Oregon. The Bandaged Man of Canyon Beach. The Bandaged Man is the American version of the Mummy. Reported the Canyon Beach History Center. It was reported in the Canyon Beach History Center and Museum. He is rumored to be the ghost of a logger who died in a sawmill accident and now terrorizes teenagers who hang out at a desert area of a highway near Canyon Beach. So the story says that he knocks on car windows to try and get in, and he smells awful at that. All right, so here we are with the international aspects of urban legends. So, in the UAE, citizens are afraid of the jinn, better known as genie. So, the word genie is the anarchalized version of the Arabic word jinn. So jinns can be good or malevolent beings. And so, it's quite interesting, particularly going to the aspect of the lore of this from how that out. I'm going to edit that out. So there is a person along that I'm going to edit that out. I'm going to edit that out. So the story is okay. I'm going to edit that out. So at first, with the story of this, she appears as a beautiful woman to attract men. But as soon as she's revealed to them, changes into a terrifying figure who eats the man she enchanted. Though it might just be a scary story to tell kids to warn them about stranger danger, there's also on top of this video reported footage of the jinn. So there are rumors that the Sydney Harbour Bridge It doubles as a tomb for 3 workers buried inside. Officially, 16 people died during the construction of the famous Harbour Bridge in Sydney, Australia, which was completed in 1928. However, legends say that there should be 3 more men added to the death toll. So, according to the stories, 3 men died during construction after they fell into the brick pylons of the bridge. However, since they were migrant workers and because labor laws didn't see all of this at the time, their disappearance was unnoticed for weeks. Apparently, retrieving the bodies would have been too difficult, and so they were entombed for the eternity. So, as you know, this element of aspect of the idea of the societal class of these undertones, from my point of view, seem to wrap itself in the elements of the story too, of this urban legend. And it's quite interesting when you look into those aspects of society of what is really said about about this. So if they were a prominent people, or add of that layer, could be an element added on to that. It's really something to say about the notion of that aspect too. And then also about the notion of the lineage of the aspect of and the Industrial Revolution and the elements of building construction from the ground up and building traditions within that element of these architectural structures. And I think that could be an element in that too. So, the first reported chupacabra attack was in Puerto Rico in 1995. Since then, there have been alleged sightings up and down North America. And I remember hearing stories about this growing up, about the chupacabra, about this aspect of how these you have to be careful at night, or these sort of things that you never know, it might attack you. And then this also along the ledge of this demonic tied to this creature and all of these mass hysterical elements being seeped in to this. And so, this is also a means of, tying into the elements of what is particularly being said about the rooted culture and how their urban legends center around certain things. So let's talk about this. The word chupacabra is Spanish for goat sucker. Indeed, chupacabras were first believed to be vampiric reptilian creatures that drained goats and other small animals of their blood. The first reported sighting of the chupacabra was in March of 1995 in Puerto Rico, when 8 sheep were found dead and drained of blood, with 3 small punctured wounds of the chest. 5 months later, as many of the 150 farm animals were found dead in the same manner. The legend spread, and more sightings followed in Latin America and the southern U.S. So there have been alleged sightings as far as north of Maine. In the 2000s, the chupacabra reemerged, but it looked to be a bit different. So, according to the BBC, it was described as a hairless dog-like animal, walking on four legs and quite horrific looking. Hairless with the gaunt appearance and burnt-looking skin. When alleged the chupacabras' bodies turned up, scientists' DNA tested them, identifying them as normal animals that were affected by the mange, their hair and fur had fallen out. However, the legend persists. And then, this is very interesting too. So, the aspect of elements of believing fact over fiction, okay? So, when you get into these lures, particularly with this, example, so it reminds me of how the changeling and how John Solo, the YouTuber, he did a really good. He's a really good YouTuber. I would suggest checking out his content if you don't already know about him. But how he broke everything down, he was talking about the changeling and how that is tied to a real medical condition that could be happening. It could be anywhere from the real possibility of the changeling with the folklore of how a fairy come in and possess a baby and then change the baby, and it's just this demonic spirit, and without the parents or the mother knowing. But this could be, and people who believe these things could be tied to something very serious. Well, of course, tied to something very serious, where the ones who choose to believe this instead of seeing the facts of everything, and then it's also one of those things where you have to excuse them because they're of a different century, and not a lot was known as far as modern medicine is arrived, as far as cerebral palsy, things of that nature, and so when people choose to still stick to the legend instead of the scientific element of what could be actually going on with these animals, that's truly something when it changes the elements about the aspect of this urban legend. So there is a story in Beijing's Ghost. It's a bus that is sure to put some people off public transportation. So, while there are more than a few variations of the story, it's likely that it's linked to this one. So, the number of the story goes of this number of this route. So the story generally goes like this: a bus is traveling late at night, around midnight, and it is the last one of the evening. Two men flag down the bus, and even though the driver is reluctant to pick them up since they're not at a stop, he does and lets them in on the bus. Everything is okay for the most part. But it turns out it's actually three men. The two are holding up another one who appears to be in rough shape. It also turns into that all three of the extraordinarily pale and wearing garb of the Jin dynasty, which lasted from 1644 to 1911. The bus driver apparently explains it away by claiming that the three are actors who didn't have time to change after work. So the Loch Ness Monster of Scotland. And this is one of the known lures, known urban legends that crossed over that almost everyone knows about. So Nessie has been, this is the affectionate nickname of the Loch Ness monster, which is Nessie. So, when found in the second deepest lake in Scotland. So, according to Encyclopedia Britannica, sightings of her go as far back as stone carvings of the Pict ancient people who lived in the East in Scotland region. Of a mysterious beast with flippers that have been discovered. So sightings really began to pick up in 1933 after a road was completed that gave visitors an obscure view of Loch Ness. A couple claimed to have seen some type of giant sea creature, and the hype grew. And then, also this could be tied into this whole thing where that this just be some prehistoric creature that was not unknown, as far as the alleged tie to the cave people and so forth. And then, and it's one of those things also, so linking into the, more modern era in the 1930s of that aspect of seeing something that you want to see, but it's not actually there, one of those things. But I digress with that. All right, so here we go with Krampus. So this is the evil version of Santa Claus. So you might have heard in 2015 a comedy hour hybrid film, but the real story of Krampus is just as terrifying as you'd expect. So National Geographic describes Krampus as a half goat, half demonic, horrific beast. Krampus is the bad version of Santa. While a jolly bearded fellow up north gives the kind kids presents, Krampus aims to scare the naughty kids into behaving better by beating them with brick branches or hauling them off to hell in sacks. He's mainly a German and Austrian figure, though other countries have their own versions and traditionally show up on December 5th, which is known as the Krampengeist, or Krampus Night. Krampengeist, forgive me on that. Though no one quite knows for certain, this tradition is often believed to have begun when the Moors raided European towns, kidnapping locals, enslaving them into slavery. And you gotta see history for what it actually is, and this is quite interesting. Giving into this is quite interesting. Giving into telling the true elements of what actually goes on, and the history of how the horrific aftertones of slavery is seen in Europe versus in the U.S. And then, it's really a learning lesson to take on if you want to. And it's one of those things that, when you dive into it and see things for what they actually is, it really changes history. And I think that's quite remarkable. And it's nice to see this and think about that. And it's just really a sad tale, and it's just horrific that these things, as far as the lore of this is the urban legend is a thing, but I think it's just interesting to get that real feel of aspect of what it's rooted in into the reality of the situation of this. And it's quite remarkable. All right, so in Greece, so the Bleeding Stone was destroyed. A curse apparently fell upon the city. So the Bleeding Stone was erected. So I'll start over. So the Bleeding Stone was by the ancient citizen of Thessaloniki to memorialize the thousands of citizens that were brutally murdered at the site of the Byzantine Empire. And it was believed to bleed every year on the anniversary of the killings. The curse worked as evil magic until 19. All right, so I'm gonna end on this. There is a Scandinavian zombie hybrid that haunts the living. So, literally translated, walking after death. Traditionally, there is a zombie hybrid that is a. Okay, let me start. I'm cut that out. I'm gonna start over again. So there is the Scandinavian hybrid of a ghost zombie that is haunting the living. So it is translated to mean walking after death. So the hybrid ghost zombie, in that it has a corporal, it has a feel. Okay, let me start over again. All right, so the Scandinavian ghost zombie hybrid that haunts the living. So when a dead person has unfinished business, or if they were killed violently through murder or suicide, the belief in them dates back to the Vikings. Okay? And when they are believed to have been relatively common. A more recent belief has another connection to this zombie hybrid. All right, typically this zombie will pinch someone while they're sleeping, and the pinched person will then be marked for sickness and death. All right, so this reaches the end of the hovering light. Tune in, turn up, and absolutely take care. Bye bye now.